Welcome, survivors, burnout community, and those just interested. It's Kelly Bupoltz, trainer, author, speaker, and your burnout prevention mentor. Burnout is not taboo. It's our reality in this chaotic, fast-paced world. But we're not going to let it drive the narrative to our stories. We're going to do something about it. So let's dig in. In this part of the vlog, we're going to be breaking down the third category in disillusionment during my burnout collapse and how it might be related to what you're feeling. And that's in the emotion category. So we have already covered the physical collapse. That was the biggest one for me. And then I went into the cognitive issues that I was having because of that physical collapse. And the third stop on this journey in this disillusionment, low performance stage of burnout is the emotional category. And there's all different emotions that can be processed during this time. And I'm going to talk about a few that I experienced that maybe you can acknowledge and be aware of the signals and signs that your body's sending you that maybe in this category, it's getting pretty rough. In a future video, I'm going to go through the 12 phases of burnout, in which is really going to highlight how this emotional category starts to escalate the burnout collapse portion, either on the mental side or on the physical side. So let's go through a few of the emotions that I was experiencing. Definitely a difficult video to make, but it's important and crucial to recognize these signs that it's not okay and that it's actually feeding your burnout, feeding your stress. So the first emotion that I was feeling was guilt. Guilt that, why can't I do this anymore? I had 3 kids, I'm hustling, I'm trying to keep up with them, I'm the mom of the year, I am a high performer at work, big job, big executive job, and I just can't do it anymore. I used to do it, I was able to do it for a long time, and now I can't. Do you feel that? Like you were on top of your game, right? Making the decisions, you could do all the things, and now you can't. That was guilt for me. And is that guilt for you where you thought you were doing great, you thought you were performing well, and now you just can't hit that mark anymore? And it's because you basically were running on pure adrenaline, and adrenaline is not sustainable. So I was feeling guilt. And then I was feeling grief. Now, grief we like to link up with like a loss of a physical person, a physical pet, but grief can actually happen within yourself. This is grief of loss of moments because you blew up at your kids or you blew up at work, that event of regret, grief of what you said, that lost moment. It could be grief, loss of self, loss of identity. And it's interesting when I go into programs, either on the workforce energy management or on the burnout prevention side, and I'll have the group identify how many of you have hobbies. And everyone kind of nods. And I said, okay, let's back up for a second. If I remove work and home obligations, how many of you can identify what you would be doing? And it's about like 25% of the room will raise their hand that they can do things without work and without family obligations. But everyone else, they don't know who they are without work or family obligations. Right? So you have this grief and loss of self that you don't even know who you are without work and without all these demands. So we need to find that again. So I was experiencing grief that I've completely lost myself into motherhood, lost myself into work, that I literally don't know what to do with myself if I don't have those two things, which you would think is a good problem to have, but it's not when you don't know who you are anymore, that you don't even know how to be with yourself or have fun or even know what your hobbies are anymore. So grief. The next emotion that I was feeling was anger. And I want to go a little deeper in this, and I'll explain at the end during the steps of how we get out of this emotional category, what was happening. So in anger, it wasn't actually anger. I wasn't angry at people. I was envious. I was resentful. And even though that seems very strong worded, you probably have felt the same. Have you ever felt that must be nice? Someone takes PTO, someone takes a vacation, someone can just leave right at the end of their shift instead of working all night or answering emails on their phone all night. Must be nice. That's an envious emotion. That's an emotion of resentment, but it has nothing to do with them. I found out through processing that emotion that Kelly needed something. Kelly needed a break. Kelly needed a nap. She didn't want to go on all these grand vacations that people were posting about or boasting about when they got back to work. Kelly needed a break. So that's why I was feeling resentful, is that must be nice is a really good time to tune in to what do you need? Because their circumstances, their events, their posts, what they're talking about has nothing to do with what you actually want. It's a need that is not being met. So that anger was actually resentment and envy. And I'll get to that in a little bit on how we can better name it. Helplessness. Oof. With all the change going on, not only inside our work environment, but outside our work environment, the school and daycare changes that I was going through with my kids, family changes around COVID. So all those tribal support mechanisms that I thought I had in place completely fell apart. Too much change. So I got into this helplessness state. And you know this state. It's where you're just stuck in this moment of time of why try. Right? You're waiting for a change, or maybe you're even trying or taking the steps for a change and you're not seeing the result. You're not seeing the outcome. And you just keep getting hits on your resiliency armor and you're like, why try? I've tried everything. And this is keeping you kind of stuck in a victim mode, which is helplessness, hopelessness. You don't want to take those steps and create a plan anymore because why try? So this helplessness state was starting to come in every day. And then overwhelm. Because you're in this helplessness state, it was too much. It was too much to work through. I couldn't even figure out where to go next. Where I started was decision, move forward. Let's keep action. And now I'm just stuck. Why try? So then the overwhelm, more and more and more starts piling on. It was too much and I couldn't even figure out where to start. So do you feel that? Do you feel some of those emotions of guilt and grief, anger, or actually resentment and envy? That helplessness state of why try, or overwhelm. Like no matter what you do, you can't get ahead, right? It's just piling on and you're going more and more underwater. So let's talk about a few steps to start working through this category. The first step you want to take is addressing the first two categories talked about in disillusionment in this burnout state. And that was physical and cognitive. If physically you are not well, you are not processing hormones well, which is like your stress hormone. This is hormones that make things just harder to deal with that stress. This is sleep hormones that are getting you some rest to process. Rest so you can have a better day. So physically, if you're not well, you know that you don't have the greatest of days, right? So physically, we got to look at how can we start to redirect your body back to better hormonal rhythms, back to a more functioning state. Cognitively, if you are in a crappy mindset, if you are always in a negative mindset, and I'm not talking about the toxic positivity opposite, I'm talking about just like poo-pooing on everything, on why try, but also like you're taking it out on other people. Anytime anything even good remotely happens to you, you still shove it down as a negative. So that negative mindset is not going to feed positive emotions, is it? So you have to start to work on some of the cognitive things, is unloading and minimizing the decisions that you have to make, really working on what is going to go well today, what's one thing I can accomplish today to get that proof of progress in your brain. Working on the physical and the cognitive categories will feed a better emotional category direction back to energy, back to this exploration and experimentation that will get you up that performance curve again. So if you're working on categories, that's also going to feed the need. The second thing you got to do is process the emotions. Ugh, gross. That was really difficult for me. I was very much a person that doesn't process emotions well. I bury them deep in my gut, probably why my digestive system was the first thing to go in my burnout collapse. And so when you start processing these emotions, you have to name them. Because if you're trying to process emotions and nothing's happening, you're naming the wrong emotion. Let's go back to that anger example. I wasn't actually angry. I was envious. I was resentful that other people's lives were this way and my life was that way, which their life has nothing to do with mine. I have a need that is not being met. So processing the right emotion is going to be important. And there's a future video on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and follow for that upcoming episode. Also out on my Burnout Community Hub on Patreon. The Name the Emotion video is already out there. All these videos are pre-released out there. And there's a worksheet where you can work down these major emotional categories into subcategories like envy and resentment. And you can also identify some of the body sensations and signals that it's saying that I don't like this, or I do like this, let's do more. So there's a worksheet out there that breaks this down. So naming the emotion is going to be important, the specific emotion, so that you can begin to process it. The third thing I want you to try is to break the dam. And what I mean by that is if you're in this state, if you're watching this video, there is some crap built up. And if you're trying to process emotions, it's hitting this dam. It's hitting everything that you've built up to this point. And this was pretty ugly for me because I built it up a long time. I was burying this stuff down a very long time. That's why my burnout got so bad. So you have to break the dam. And in order to break the dam, you need to start whittling away at all these things you've had to build up in your survivorship mode. And you became someone that you didn't want to be because you were in survivorship mode. And that is okay because you had to do what you had to do. But now you're not that person. Now you're moving out of that survivorship mode. So you have to break the dam so that these emotions can start processing through and flowing at ease. Now when things kind of hit my resiliency armor, they just bounce off of me. People are still crappy. Stress is still here. Stress has been here and stress will always be. Stress is still in my life, but it just bounces off of me and processes easier. There's people that slight me, processes right out. There's things that don't go well for me, processes right out because I broke this dam. Before it was hitting this dam, and the damage being done to me was so extensive. But now that I have broken this down, I process all these things I have built up. These emotions are flowing with ease and bouncing off of me much easier than they did in years before. So you have to start working on breaking that down, which means mending relationships, which means physically taking care of yourself, which means cognitively really working on that mindset in such a negative world. And we are going to go over the fourth category in a couple weeks on relationships and give you some relationship tips to start having those healthy conflict conversations, start realizing the relationships that are toxic that maybe don't need to be in your life, and the ones that you should probably work on mending. So going through the precursor categories to this emotional category of physical and cognitive, doing some of that work by naming the specific emotion, not the major emotions, by naming that specific emotion that's going to help you to start working through that and processing that either through meditation, through journaling, through therapy. And then, of course, the third one is breaking down the dam that you've built up over the years so that you can begin to flow these emotions and go through your days just a little bit lighter. So a key thing in this emotional category that I want you to remember is we're not getting rid of emotions. We're processing them and naming them so emotions can be around with ease. So they're not a damper on your life. So you can have something happen to you and it bounces right off of you, that resiliency armor. Because the only way out of this darkness is up the curve in exploring and experimentation back to energy.
I know you're not lazy. Most people in burnout are high performers, those serving others before themselves. Don't discount this step today, the action in which you focused on your self-growth. Piecing together the puzzle is half the journey. Rediscovering yourself, energy, and establishing new habits is the other. Do not underestimate the untapped inner strength inside you. Explore more resources on my website to move from zombie mode back to liveliness. See you soon.